Folks, we want to introduce our keynote speaker. He's going to be addressing the issue, can Judeo-Christian civilization survive this election? Wow, can't wait to hear that. And Dennis Prager, of course, is one of America's most respected radio talk show hosts. He's been broadcasting on radio in Los Angeles since 1982. His popular show became nationally syndicated in 1999, and it airs live Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon, based right here at our own home station of KRLA. You'll be hearing more in his presentation about Prager University, but he co-founded this university. It's an institution of higher learning on the internet, with a unique difference because all the courses are 5 minutes long. The courses distill the best ideas of the best minds in the world and cover the disciplines of political science, history, philosophy, religion, economics, and psychology. And it's real easy to find at prageru.com. So you'll be hearing more about that. But I told Dennis just before I came on, the only way this man ever disappoints me is when he wraps up and he ends. Because, and I don't say this about many speakers, but this man could go on, and I would just be on the edge of my seat for the entire time. But as I introduce him, I had to distill his very impressive resume into just a few of the highlights. And honestly, it reads like a Dos Equis commercial. It really does. The Los Angeles Times calls him an amazingly gifted man and moralist whose mission in life has been crystallized to get people obsessed with what is right and what is wrong. Toastmasters calls him one of America's 5 best speakers. He's written 5 books and has made the New York Times bestseller list and is a nationally acclaimed columnist. He has lectured on all 7 continents, in 45 U.S. states, and in 9 of Canada's 10 provinces. He is engaged with Catholics at the Vatican, Muslims in the Persian Gulf, Hindus in India, and Protestants at Christian seminaries throughout America. He has lectured in Russia in Russian. He has lectured in Israel in Hebrew. He has collaborated on film projects with industry giants David Zucker and Trey Parker. In his spare time, he conducts orchestras and has introduced hundreds of thousands of people to classical music. In fact, the police often question him just because they find him so interesting. When in Rome, they do what he does. He once taught a German shepherd to bark in French. Presidents take his birthday off. Superman has pajamas with the PragerU logo on them. The dark is afraid of him. Panhandlers give him money. And he can't pass through metal detectors at the airport because of his magnetic personality. He is the most interesting man in the world. And he's also our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dennis Prager.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, I'm going to comment on that introduction in a moment. Let me just say, though, you have no idea, you really don't. You can't imagine. When I get a standing ovation before I speak, it's very intimidating. How can I do any better? I'd actually prefer if there's, who's he? Who's he? Then I could pleasantly surprise you, but now I have to live up to such expectations. Anyway, I have to say, I have given thousands and thousands of speeches. This is probably the funniest introduction I have ever received. Witty, funny. In fact, it was so good it reminded me I wanted to record this. I actually took my recorder out. How often do you record your introduction? I used to when my mother was living, but now there's nobody to give it to, you know. Talk about my mother, because it's going to be so somber, some of this. I'd rather get some levity in, because, you know, I'm a big fan of happiness. This is really priceless. Every one of you, nearly virtually every one of you has had a mother. Well, you all had a mother, but I should be more precise. Knew your mother, okay? And basically, more or less, for most people, the sun is just where, the sun rises and all of that stuff. Not fully true my mother. When I first began speaking, I'll never forget, I was in I started speaking at 21, and then I started actually charging for speeches at about 24. My first speech was $35, and I sweated before I said $35 to the people that were inviting me. And anyway, my mother looked at me one day in my mid-20s, and when I was visiting the house, and she said, "So you're getting paid for speeches?" I said, "Yeah." "That's funny. I can hear you for free and don't listen." The other one, the reason that I thought about this was, one day I was on CNN, and I just decided, because I'm on CNN a lot, and these other things, I'm almost never in their studio because they're back east, and I live here on the West Coast, and so I go into a room alone, staring into a camera. I don't even see the person talking to me. It's just staring out. So it's irrelevant if I could see or not. There's nothing to see. So I decided once, just as a lark, I would take my glasses off and see how do I look on camera with no glasses on. During the intermission, my mother calls me and just says, "Put them back on." When your own mother thinks you look better with glasses, it's a bad sign. It's why I often get the line, he has a face for radio. And But in any event, the truth is my mother loved me and adored, and she was thrilled with all the success. I want to make that clear. She had a picture of me in her house that took up a wall. It was embarrassing, actually, to walk in. But in any event, I want to thank you. I just want to say that this church and this pastor, specifically Jack Hibbs, all your pastors, but of course Jack Hibbs, you're fighting the great fight, and I'm honored to be here. I just need you to know that there aren't enough Jack Hibbses around. Obviously, it's a compliment to him, but I actually said that more in sadness than I did even as a compliment. And that's going to be much of my topic here. I've gotten to know your Pastor Morgan, and God bless him as well, the only Christian from New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. There may be two others, but I haven't met them. Congressman Bob McEwen is here. He and I have spoken on programs all over the country. I was shocked and honored, obviously, that you're here. You've heard me so often, as I have heard you so often, but that you would do it again, it puts some pressure on me, but I'm very honored. And of course, Don Dix, fellow radio man who was on your program, Karen England, I heard is here as well. So to all of you, thank you. Gil Mertz's introduction was just terrific. Give him a hand, because that took work. That was really something. Thank you. Okay, my friends, I want to be candid. I am always candid. I started radio 34 years ago. That's a long time. And there were a few things that I took an inner vow from the beginning. I think you'll find this of interest. One was, I said to myself, Dennis, never exaggerate. Because it's very powerful when you do, but over time, people will stop fully believing you. So that was one of the vows I took, and I'm very much, I will always understate rather than overstate, and it has worked. It's just a good thing to do. So that was one of the vows I took. Another one was, be open. was harder, actually. Once you get in the habit of not exaggerating, it's a good habit. Habits are just good. Or good habits are good. But here was a tough one. How much of myself will I reveal? And most talk show hosts don't. And they can have a great show, by the way. But just walking in, one of you said to me, who seated outside, said, "You don't know me, but I know you." And I said, "That's right, you do." There is no different Dennis. The one you hear that's me. That is me. So in light of that, I do want to reveal something that is almost a daily battle. And that is, how do I convey my worries about America and the West without dispiriting my audience? It's a very tough, thin line to walk. I can't give you false optimism. I don't believe in that, because then I would be lying to you. I'm not optimistic. On the other hand, I want to make something clear, because people are, and this I have said on the air, I am confused somewhat by this. If you only fight when you're optimistic, what's the point of fighting? And the thing that changed my mind, not my mind, my life in this matter was visiting the graves at Normandy Beach in France. Many of you have been there. I could tell from the hum that greeted that comment. Those thousands upon thousands of graves, mostly of young men who were about 20 years old on average. The great Steven Spielberg movie about the Normandy invasion shows some of them urinating in their pants on the way there. Optimists, forgive the language, don't pee in their pants, right? Nobody optimistic has ever done that. They fought anyway. The notion that you only fight if you're sure you'll win is literally pointless. Then what's the point? If you're going to win anyway, why fight? And if you'll only fight if you're going to... So in other words, it's really an invitation never to fight. Because if you're going to win, why bother? And you're saying, if you don't know you'll win, don't bother. So there's no time at all to bother. I'm not fighting because I think I'll win. I'm fighting because those guys died on Normandy Beach, and not in order of importance, just what I just mentioned that's big. I'm fighting because I could tell this audience, and you'll understand, I believe in God. And God makes demands on us. My relationship with God is an interesting one and worthy of its own talk. But I'll again be totally candid with you. I hope it doesn't in any way disturb any of you. I don't ask God for things. I only want to know what God asks of me. That's the truth. I don't know if it sounds noble or sad or even un-Christian or un-Jewish, but that's the truth. My only question is not, what will you do for me, but what do you want me to do for you? And I really am animated by that. It's very animating. I don't know how you believe in the God of the Bible and not fight constantly now. Because the forces that wish to produce a godless America and a godless West are winning. It's as simple as that. By sheer coincidence, my nationally syndicated column last Tuesday, I printed it out here. There's one that National Review picks it up in Town Hall and a lot of other places, happily. But I would write if the littlest website in the world published it, because somebody will read it, and I have to say it. Is titled, How is the Godless West working out? So let me just, I never read during speeches, but I think this is so appropriate So let me just, it's pretty much bullet points. Some recent developments in the godless West. The Supreme Court of Italy last week ruled that public masturbation is legal. The New York City Council voted last month to legalize public urination. San Francisco Council decided by one vote to continue the city's ban on public nudity. By one vote. Not on grounds, of course, of decency, but on the grounds of public health. But since that can easily be resolved by use of a towel on public benches and chairs, it's only a matter of time, probably a couple of years, before people will be permitted to walk around naked in San Francisco. A few weeks ago, the city of Charleston, North Carolina, instructed its teachers not to ever refer to their elementary school students as boys and girls. But this is Charlotte, North Carolina. This is not San Francisco. But as students, and you'll love this one, scholars, because we want to increase the self-esteem of third graders. The reasons are presumably, one, the need for inclusivity. There might be a student who has no gender identity. And two, the belief that adults should not impose a gender identity on young people. That is the left-wing position in the West. You may not, it is a form of child abuse to impose gender identity on your child. That is why they have, I think, successfully had Walmart drop boys' toys and girls' toys, drop pink and blue. They don't want to, quote unquote, impose gender identity on children. At a grown-up age, you'll decide whether you wish to be male, identify as male, identify as female, or as any one of the other 53 categories that are listed when you sign up for many websites, including Facebook. When you sign up, I think that there are 56 choices for gender identity. Yeah. The New York Times op-ed column, a professor of philosophy noted his shock. I was shocked that the New York Times published this. Noted his shock at learning that most young Americans do not believe that moral truths exist. They are incapable of asserting that anything, including, and this is the professor's words, killing for fun, unquote, is wrong beyond personal opinion. So these are just a few examples of what is happening in our godless West. If I had to summarize all of my work in radio and writing, it's been really a lifetime explaining the consequences of secularism. Secular government is fine, secular society is horrible. People find that difficult to understand because they've only been taught that secularism is a blessing. But in the West, it is not. It's the end of the Judeo-Christian value system. That is ultimately what the left wishes to do. It wishes to replace the Judeo-Christian value system. And let me explain to you how successful this has been. As I have noted now on a number of occasions, in the last 100 years, the most dynamic religion in the world has not been Christianity, unfortunately. Certainly not been Judaism, my religion. It has not been Islam even. It has not been Mormonism. It has been leftism. By far, that has been the most dynamic religion of the last 100 years. Plus, it has influenced Judaism and Christianity far more than Judaism and Christianity have influenced anything in the last 100 years. Now, the first part is very important, how much leftism has influenced Judaism and Christianity. Most rabbis and ministers and many, many priests are theologically, perhaps, well, we'll put the rabbis aside because they're not even theologically traditional in many instances, but let's talk about Christians, Protestant and Catholic. Most mainstream Protestantism, some of the pastors will have basic Christian theology. In other words, they'll assert, I believe in the Trinity, which is obviously basic Christian theology. Beyond that, though, their value system is not Christian. Their value system is leftism. So their theology, it's really leftism with a cross. Just as in my religion, you have so much Judaism, which is leftism with a Jewish star, or with the Torah, or with a prayer shawl. But the value system is leftism. And in the Catholic Church, the same thing. The Pope is a leftist. And I would say this, and in fact, I just did. Last week I said this at a Catholic university when I was on tour on the East Coast in the battleground states, as they're called. And it ended up in Philadelphia with 2,000 folks. And sure enough, it was at a Catholic college. And I said this, I never say different things to different audiences. It's not that it's that noble, it's that I wouldn't remember what I said. So I would be ruined. Oh, what did I say there? It never. That's the reason I can't lie. Not because I'm noble. I hope I'm noble, but that's not the real reason. I don't remember. This is not a matter of age, by the way. This was true at 18. So it was a gift that I don't remember what I said anywhere else. But I said there, the Pope is a leftist. He is theologically Catholic. But his value system is leftism, and that's what matters. And the proof is it's in the article too. And I wrote a whole piece just on Pope Francis. Actually, I could tell it to you. I more or less memorized it. So Pope Francis went to World Youth Day. This is where Catholic kids from all over the world meet. This year it was in Poland. On the way back, he was on the papal airplane flying back to Rome. 5 days earlier, the Catholic priest in France had his throat slit while saying Mass. You all recall that, correct? And the reason I'm asking you is it's hard to remember all the terror. We have become inured. Anyway, you will recall that. A Catholic priest is literally slaughtered by a Muslim in the name of Islam. So on the papal plane back to Rome from Poland, he is asked by a Catholic reporter for a Catholic news agency in France. So he's a believing Catholic asking this. And he said, Holy Father, how come you tend not to speak at all about Islamic violence? This is 5 days after a priest is slaughtered by a believing Muslim. And his answer was, why would I do that? I don't talk about violent Catholics. And remember, every day here in Italy, a baptized Catholic will, let's say, kill his girlfriend. Do you understand what he's saying? So someone who doesn't affirm Catholicism may well be an atheist, but is a baptized Catholic, is as responsible for murdering his girlfriend as a Catholic, as a person in the name of Islam is responsible for murdering a priest. So there's no difference, get it? There's no difference between a violent Muslim and a violent Catholic. But I don't know anybody who's being murdered in the name of Catholicism. Do you? Or Christianity in general, or Judaism, or Mormonism, or any other, or Buddhism, or Hinduism. Sometimes, yes, I take it back. There are rare occasions in India. Place of 1 billion people, it's going to happen. But in any event, this is the Pope speaking. And the reason is the Pope comes from Argentina. Latin America is leftist. Period. That's the problem, incidentally, with whether legal or illegal. That is the problem with a massive amount of immigrants to America from Latin America. It has nothing to do with race or ethnicity. Nothing. Pope Francis, I think, is as white as I am. He's as European as any European. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has to do with values. Latin Americans have left-wing values. There are a few exceptions, very few. This was a great education for me. I'm trying in my own way through, obviously, the radio and writing, but especially Prager University, because this year we'll have 140 million views. And that's a big deal. And there's nothing with these values that has this number of views. I thank God for this opportunity with these 5-minute videos, and the single greatest number are under 35 years of age. That's huge. It's so big that I now get as many calls for the first time in my career of people under 35 as over 35. It has never happened before. They came to it through Prager University, then they look me up, and then they start listening. Anyway, I got a call from a guy from Caracas, a Venezuelan, called the show. How do you know? It's 27 years old. And he made a very powerful point. He said, first of all, and this really, you have no idea how this thrilled me. He said it in such a sweet way. He said, you know, because of your videos, I met God. I love that. I met God. I just love that. That was so great. Not I came to believing, I met God. It was awesome. Because a lot of our videos, I would say about 15%, are not politics, not economics, not philosophy, but are the case for God. There are 10 that I gave on the 10 Commandments. And it's all very rational and we'll show you one example later. It's only 5 minutes. But he said a very interesting thing. You know what's happening in Venezuela. In Venezuela, the left took over. Socialists under Chavez took over. He died. Maduro took over. And now this rich country in Latin America has lines for toilet paper, lines for bread, and people go over the border to Colombia in order to get things. I mean, Colombia is not a rich place. Imagine you have to go to Colombia to buy something is a statement. So he told me, he said, Dennis, you need to understand something. The opposition is also socialist. That was such a revelation to me. I felt stupid that I didn't realize it. Latin America is so left-wing in its orientation that even when the left wing is unpopular, the assumption is it's the individual who screwed up, not leftism. That was the most disheartening thing he could tell me. Oh, it's Maduro's fault. It's like in this country, oh, it's Hillary. It's not Hillary. Hillary is morally challenged. I can't. I agree. But that's not. But it's irrelevant. It's relevant morally, but it's not irrelevant socially, politically, Americanly. It's irrelevant. Nice. What if it was an honorable leftist? It wouldn't make any difference whether leftism is espoused by a beautiful human or an ugly human. It's equally damaging. And no one has, no, I take that back. That was an exaggeration, and I caught myself. Almost no Republican has made this point in my lifetime since Reagan, that the problem is leftism, not Pelosi, not Biden, not Obama, not Hillary. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If they were all kidnapped by extraterrestrials, their replacements would be the same thing. It doesn't matter. We're fighting an ideology, not individuals. But the Republican Party doesn't know this. It doesn't understand this, that we're fighting an ideology. You understand this, but not many people in America, not many conservatives understand this. And so the focus is on this race, and that's important, obviously. But in the final analysis, we've lost the schools. We've lost the media, not the news media and the social media and the entertainment media. There's nothing left. After media and schools, what do you have? How do you influence people if you've lost the schools, lost half the churches, lost half the synagogues? You didn't just lose those things. We're losing. It was so successful, the American experiment, that people don't understand why it was so good. They take it for granted. But there will be people who will publicly now sit down, get on a knee when the national anthem is played. Do you realize where we've come? And the President of the United States defends it. It's a disgrace. It's people, black and white, died for that flag. And you won't stand for it? You are one piece of work. We have done so well in creating a decent society, easily the least racist society in the history of multiracial societies. There is nothing to compare. This country is so non-racist, and everybody knows it. But the left needs to paint the country as racist, because you must keep telling black Americans how bad it is, how much whites don't want them included in the prosperity of the society in order to retain their vote. It's pure cynicism. It is it's the lying to people to get their vote. Every one of you interacts, every one of us. We have interracial interaction every day, and it's great. I want you to know, it's really, I'm always, my mind is blown by this. I'm very sensitive to human interaction. I think, good antennae. I watch very carefully. I think I could pick up on fake behavior. Blacks and whites in America relate so easily that it's like a non-issue. It is just a non-issue. So when I'm told of systemic racism, where is it? How come I'm missing it? Am I willfully blind? When professors teach these kids that whites are all racist, and there are only two types of whites. This is what your kids are taught at college. There are two types of whites. Those who know they're racist, and those who don't know they're racist. So I wonder, what is the professor who's white? Does he know he's racist? I always wonder. I mean, it's the most logical question. Professor, which group do you belong to? Maybe you're just projecting your own racism onto other whites. I am not a racist. Hello? It doesn't occur to me. I'm not a racist, A, because I know that God created the human being in his image. That includes everybody. There's another reason. But there's another reason I'm not a racist, and I mean this sincerely. I'm not stupid. You have to be stupid to be a racist, not just bad, stupid. To believe that color of skin matters, you have to be stupid. It means you do not think rationally. I pride myself in rational thought. So even if I were mean-spirited, I couldn't be a racist because I am rational. It's also, by the way, one of the mottos of my life. You will love this. If you haven't heard me say it on the air, this is life-changing. I was on Book TV. It was a great honor. I really mean it, because I watched Book TV, and for years my wife introduced me to it, and I love it. It's on weekends on C-SPAN, and they're very, very, very careful to have just as many conservatives as liberals. They have far right, medium left, center, but it's totally fair. So 6 times a year, every month, so 12 times a year, they have someone on, an author, on their collected body of works, not on their recent book, and for 3 hours. You never get 3 hours on television. You usually don't get more than 3 minutes. And so I was chosen, and I was very pleased because it gave me a chance to have this forum. And it was a chance to tell a lot of things, including they ask you, what are the books that most influenced your life? So I wrote on the top the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. I wonder how many authors in the history of Book TV said the Torah or even the Bible. I'd be curious. But I listed this book you should all read called Man's Search for Meaning. It was written by a psychoanalyst, a Jew, Dr. Viktor Frankl. He's not a religious man. He was a psychoanalyst who was in Auschwitz, the Nazi concentration camp. And when he left, family members, of course, had been murdered. He saw hell that we can only imagine. And he was asked, Dr. Frankel, do you hate the German race? And he said, no, because there are only two races, the decent and the indecent. That's my motto. And the second you believe that, racism is not possible. I do. I divide the world between the decent and the indecent, not between black and white, not between Hispanic and Asian. This is all nonsense. It means nothing to me. Decent, indecent means everything to me. And this is in following God's will. God saved Noah, and it's the only flood story on earth. Every society on earth had a flood story. So by the way, the odds are there was a flood. If every society had a flood story, one might deduce in some leap of faith that there really was a flood. Anyway, how is the biblical flood story different? Because it's the only one where God or the gods save the hero because he was good. In every other story, because he was handsome, because he was rich, because he had sex with the gods. I'm very serious. This is what only the biblical story made the flood story a moral story. God cares about goodness, not handsomeness, not race. You know what race Noah was? I don't. You know what race Adam was? I don't. Do you care? I don't. This is the least racist country in history, and people just label it racist. It's a libel against a beautiful country. It is unprecedented, I think, that a good society had so many people that wished to kill it. I don't know if there is a precedent for this in history, but it shows you how the forces of darkness are so deep in the human spirit that anybody would not want to celebrate what this country has achieved. The question is not why are there any racists, is why are there so few? The question is not why are there poor people in America, it's why are there so few? Poverty is the human norm. Racism is the human norm. So intelligent people, as opposed to leftists, intelligent people, and I mean that sincerely, they have fine brains, but they are not intelligent. If they were intelligent, they wouldn't be leftist. I hate saying this. I hate saying this. No, you must understand, I do hate saying this because there are people I love who have left-wing views. I mean it. And who are intelligent in every other area of life, but they have suspended critical judgment when it comes to all these issues. The United States, the question is how do we improve it, not how do we transform it. In 5 days, we will fundamentally transform the United States of America, or something virtually to that effect. Those are the words that are accurate. This is what then Senator Obama said in 2008, 5 days before the election. Fundamentally transform the United States of America, and the overwhelmingly white audience cheered like crazy. You are a fool if you wish to fundamentally transform the United States of America. I never judge people's feelings. People's feelings are what they say they are. So if a left-winger says they love America, I will never challenge that. The only thing I will challenge is how rational is that comment? If you heard a man say, I would like to fundamentally transform my wife, would you think he loved her? It's so commonsensical. You can't love what you wish to fundamentally transform. It's not possible. That's why they don't think things through. That's what I'm saying. Oh, I love America and I want to fundamentally transform it. Then you don't love it. Your love is meaningless. And I don't care whether they love it. I care whether they want to fundamentally transform it. I don't care what their feelings are. I care what their deeds are. And their deeds are to fundamentally transform the only best hope for mankind that was ever made. Lincoln was right. It is the last best hope on earth. Fundamentally transform it. Bernie Sanders, you know what the name of his new group is now that he's out of the race? His group is called Our Revolution. So, as I have said on a number of occasions, I thought our revolution took place in 1776. See? But it didn't, not for the left. They are literally, and I mean literally, they are literally counter-revolutionaries. They wish to undo the American Revolution and substitute the French Revolution for it. That's why they're so pro-Europe. We were so antagonistic to Europe and its values that the whole point was to escape it. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, who are considered the least religious of the founders, do you know they actually, you could see this on the internet, they commissioned a seal for the United States. It's tragic that it wasn't adopted. The seal was the Jews leaving Egypt. The fire by night and the cloud by day, and it's totally biblical scene. And you know why? Just as the Jews left Egypt, we Americans left Europe. The left wishes to bring us back to Europe. They wish to undo the Exodus. It is to me as if somebody were to get up and say, let's go back to Egypt. If somebody had said it in the book of Exodus, yeah, let's go back to Egypt. Actually, there were Jews who did, right? We ate well. We ate well there. Let's go back to Egypt. See, this is universal. By the way, I believe leftism comports with human nature very well. Otherwise, people wouldn't find it. People don't want liberty. Americans want liberty. They want security. They want not to work hard. They want to be taken care of. And that's what the left promises you. America promised you the right to fail. People don't want the right to fail. This is it's an aberration in human history, and aberrations have to be perpetuated, or they don't get perpetuated. Everything that the Judeo-Christian tradition has stood for, especially emanating from the Bible, the left wishes to undo. And I wrote this 25 years ago. So this is, I'm watching my fears being realized. Perhaps the most important idea of the Hebrew Bible, and obviously carried on by Christians, has been the idea of distinctions. It's unfortunate that, again, even believing Jews and Christians don't realize this often. So let me explain it. The word in Hebrew for holy is kadosh. Kadosh means separate. So that when God says, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy, in Leviticus, what God is saying, in effect, is you shall be separate because I am separate. You shall be distinct because I am distinct. Here are the distinctions that the Bible gave to the world, none of which really existed prior to the Bible, in no order of importance. Man and God are distinct. Man and animal are distinct. Man and woman are distinct. Good and evil are distinct. Holy and profane are distinct. The left is undoing all 5 of those distinctions. Man is God. We don't need God. Man is God. That's obvious. There was a 6th. God and nature are distinct. God and nature. Nature is God now for the left. So that's a second of the sixth being obliterated. The holy and profane, well, I just read to you. In New York, you can now publicly urinate. In Italy, you can publicly masturbate. In San Francisco, you will soon publicly walk naked. Why does this trouble religious people? Because we believe in the holy and the unholy. The secular do not. That's all. That's why there's public cursing. The mayor of Los Angeles, when the Los Angeles Kings won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, got up at Staples Center and said, in front of 18,000 people there and 100,000 watching, many of them kids, of course, said, I know politicians shouldn't do two things in public, and that is, drink and curse. Well, I'm going to do both. And he picks up his beer and then says, this is an effing great day for Los Angeles. And he didn't say effing. He said the word. And the fans cheered like crazy, like he was cool. It's cool to curse publicly. But he's a secular man. The concept of the holy, it would be like talking Sanskrit to him. It means nothing. Nothing! When I wrote about the nudity issue in San Francisco, I read all the comments on my articles. I mean, unless they're in the tens of thousands, obviously I can't. But I read about 1,000 comments. And if they're under 1,000, I certainly read them. And I'm particularly interested in the negative. And when I made the case in one of my columns I spoke about the San Francisco nudity laws and how for a secular person this is a non-issue, but for the religious individual who believes that animals can show their genitalia publicly, but people should not because we're not animals. The hatred and mockery that my column received, here's a very interesting thing that I have witnessed. We now have out about 160 videos from Prager University. And as you see, 140 million is a lot in a year. So we get a lot of comments, including a lot of negative ones on YouTube and on Facebook. Do you know we have talked about economic issues from a conservative standpoint and political issues and racial issues. Do you know which get the most hate and mockery? The arguments for God's existence. Isn't that interesting? Nothing brings, hatred, and mockery. The mockery, that's their only weapon really, is mockery. And so when I spoke about, public nudity may not be a good idea because we are not animals. I was the butt of jokes and of mockery and, I can't believe a human like this even writes these days. He's like a throwback to the past, which I am, by the way. Clearly I am. I am. It's a 3,000-year past, actually. So let's see. So man and God, nature and God, profane and holy. The biggest one, I predicted 25 years ago, it's in writing, is man and woman, male and female. They're obliterating that distinction. Who would have thought that? I saw it coming, and now you can't say boys and girls to kids in a Charlotte public school. There is no such thing as male and female. And again, Genesis, God created Adam. Male and female, he created them. When God creates animals, it doesn't say male and female, he created them, because that distinction doesn't matter. It's just a biological one to reproduce. But in the human being, the male-female distinction is very important. It is bedrock to our civilization. Look, the truth is, as soon as it was said, it doesn't matter the gender of the person you marry, then it was saying, and this has nothing to do pro-anti-gay. I'm simply talking about what the argument is. The moment you say that the sex, the gender of the person you marry doesn't matter, you are saying gender doesn't matter. That's what troubles me. I don't want gays hurt, God forbid, literally God forbid. The issue isn't gay, the issue is male-female distinction. And if you advocate that, you are now a hater. And by the way, there is no question, because this is what you invited me to talk on. This is a tipping point in America. It just is, because if this election goes leftward, then please know there is no doubt in my mind, increasingly churches that hold values such as this church will be prosecuted and persecuted. There is no question. It has already begun to happen in Europe, where there are pastors who are arrested for hate crime for quoting Leviticus, arrested for hate crime for still saying that marriage should be between a man and a woman. It's not that we're wrong, it's that we're haters, and they will ban hate speech. Freedom of speech, according to Pew Research, is now only believed in by about half of millennials. They believe that if you say something that a minority considers hateful, you should not have free speech. That's half of your children or grandchildren. And that's what they're taught at university, which is the breeding ground for leftism. You don't get a degree in poli-sci or sociology or anthropology, you get a degree in leftism. These are the distinctions that are being destroyed. Good and evil, I read to you from that professor, who even writing in the New York Times. They don't believe in moral truth. They don't. That's why I have been asking since my 20s, I have been asking the question, would you save your dog or a stranger first if both were drowning? And since my 20s, the vote has been identical in every high school I've gone to. 1/3 vote for the stranger, 1/3 for the dog, and 1/3 don't know what they would do. 2/3 would not save a stranger before their dog. Why? I love my dog, I don't love the stranger. Everything is feelings-based. There is no objective moral truth. You and I hope you and I, believe that you save the stranger, not because you love the stranger more than your dog. Everybody loves their dog more than a stranger. You save the stranger because they're created in God's image and your dog isn't. I'm sorry. It's just painful for me to relate this to you, but I have to say it. Therefore, even my wife, I can't use me as the example, even my wife, who really does love the dogs, I am a very unjealous man. But I have to say, I'll leave it at that. The bulldog gets a lot of kisses. I just thought I'd note that. Nevertheless, even my wife would save a stranger before either of the two dogs, because she's animated by values in her behavior, not by feelings, because she's a religious person. It's a very big difference. Oh God, to give you an idea of how they don't think clearly, how often they have thought they've stumped me, either on an internet site or calling up my show. Okay, well, Dennis, what if the stranger were Hitler? To which the answer is, then it's not a stranger! They really think they got me on that one, yeah. Do you not understand, if I know it's Hitler, you have changed the question? It's not then a generic human. It's a vile person who deserves to drown. I would help him drown. But they think they get me. I love that. They're sure, oh, we're going to get him. But that's because they probably got a graduate degree. You're laughing because of its truth. You wouldn't laugh if it didn't have so much truth. So this is this is our crisis. It's a terrible crisis. So I have to leave you with, you have to fight. You just have to fight. God wants you to fight. That should be enough. The dead in Normandy want you to fight. That should be enough. All those who died for this country, that should be enough. That this is the last best hope for mankind, that should be enough. That's a lot. That's pretty big. But we're not winning. We're losing. It's a fact. God, the number of parents I meet who are religious and or just conservative, and whose kids went to college, and they don't recognize their children. They don't, and I warn them, don't send your kids straight from high school to college unless you're certain that they have their values really clear and strong. Do anything. If they work for the sanitation department for a year, that would be excellent. I have two recommendations for what they should do right after high school. There are two things that I recommend. One is be a waiter or waitress. It's a phenomenal job. It forces you to smile when you're in a bad mood. And anything that does that is phenomenally important. It teaches you about real life, the value of money, everything good. The opposite of college, which teaches you about fantasy land, taught to you by people who live in fantasy land. It's very sad. It's all sad. The other thing is send your child for a month or more to Israel. And the reason, I want to explain something. Not just because obviously I'm pro-Israel, as any moral human being should be. No. It's to be anti-Israel is morally sick. It is just simply morally sick. But the reason is they'll go to Israel, they'll realize what a decent place it is, how good it is for Israeli Arabs, who are a fifth of the country. Then they'll come back and be told that Israel is a horrific place, apartheid and so on. Then they'll know that their professors are lying to them. So they're probably lying about America too. And there will be a great lesson therefore for them. So but a waiter and waitress and a visit to Israel, a long visit to Israel, would be a terrific thing. It's also good for their Christian faith if your child's Christian. Obviously, that's another benefit of a visit to Israel, but I'm talking now specifically within American terms. But this is what we have to do, and I thank God for you. That's all I could say. And for your pastors and for all those who are working with us, because you would never have believed, you just wouldn't, that the society has descended so fast. But you know why? Because we didn't do what Moses said you should do in Deuteronomy. And you will teach these words diligently to your children when you lie down and when you rise up and when you walk by the way. We thought that they would get the values of America just by living here. And there was a big mistake. I knew when I was a kid, I'm a baby boomer, and I remember so vividly when I was in college thinking the following. The parents of so many of my peers had a motto. They grew up in the Depression, went through World War II, and so their motto was, I'm going to give my kid everything that I didn't have. And you know what my response even in college was? It's a big mistake, because you're not giving them everything you did have. That's the big problem. That's what they didn't do. They didn't give them a daily Bible reading. They gave them air conditioning in their own room that they didn't have. But the stuff they did have, they didn't give. And we're reaping what we have sown. I'm going to show you now, and then just give you a thank you afterwards. I'm going to show you one example of one of our Prager University videos, and I even forgot which I chose. Is Lori here? What did I choose? Which one is it about? Anybody know? I know somebody knows because I picked it and I just chose it right before I came out. Doesn't matter, you'll like it. Okay. What we do is we are trying to change minds in 5 minutes. We're succeeding. The trick is to get it to more and more people. You can help us, obviously, by just saying, you know what, give me 5 minutes. And pick, by the way, we have professors from Princeton and Harvard to Adam Carolla, one of the funniest living men. So please understand, pick the one you think that would be most effective. But we want to change minds. So here is one example. It's just 5 minutes.
Which is the most persecuted religious group in the world today? The answer, in terms of sheer numbers and sheer horror, might surprise you. It's Christians. specifically Christians living in Muslim-majority countries, countries where Christians often preceded Muslims by centuries. I'm not talking about war on Christmas type harassment. I'm talking about know your place or we're going to kill you persecution. Astonishingly, the Western mainstream media barely acknowledge what is happening. Let's look closer at this issue. It tells us a lot about the world we're living in. 100 years ago, 20% of North Africa and the Middle East, the birthplace of Christianity, was Christian. Today, Christians make up 4% of the population. Much of that decline has occurred in the last decade. In essence, Muslims are rendering North Africa and the Middle East free of Christians. Take Egypt, for example, my ancestral homeland. In just the past 2 years, tens of thousands of Christian Copts have left Egypt, and many others want to leave, but they simply cannot afford to. Why they want to leave is no mystery. On New Year's Day, 2011, the Two Saints Church in Alexandria was bombed, leaving 23 Copts dead and 97 injured. In recent years, dozens of Coptic churches have been attacked, many burned to the ground. In August 2013 alone, the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters attacked and destroyed some 80 churches. Unfortunately, Egypt is more the rule than the exception. Hundreds of Nigerian churches have been destroyed in recent years, with especially deadly attacks reserved for Christmas and Easter church services, leaving dozens dead or mutilated. Churches have been bombed or burned in Iraq, Syria, and just about every place in the Middle East where churches still exist, except Israel. Christian businesses have been torched, Christian girls have been kidnapped, sold as child brides or slaves, and had acid thrown in their faces for not being veiled. Anyone born a Muslim who converts to Christianity faces jail and possibly execution. The list of fresh atrocities by Muslims against Christians grows longer almost every day. Even in Muslim countries often portrayed as moderate, Morocco, Indonesia, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Christian minorities are under legal pressure not to build churches or evangelize. The Christians in these Muslim countries are often identical to their co-citizens in race, ethnicity, national identity, culture, and language. There is no political dispute between the Christians and Muslims, no land dispute. Vastly outnumbered and politically marginalized, these Christians simply wish to worship in peace. Instead, they are hounded and attacked. So then, why is this happening? And why is the media making so little mention of it? The first question is easy to answer. Christians are being persecuted in Muslim countries because they're Christians, or as the Quran puts it, infidels. That is, non-Muslims who are regarded by many fundamentalist Muslims as inferior. As a fundamentalist interpretation of the holy books of Islam has grown in the last 50 or so years, Christians have suffered, and in recent years they have suffered terribly. I document this in my book, Crucified Again, Exposing Islam's New War on Christians. If this were happening to any other group besides Christians, it would be the human rights tragedy of our time. There would be loud worldwide calls for action. But the silence in the mainstream Western media is, as they say, almost deafening. Why? Because Muslim persecution of Christians throws a wrench in the media's narrative that Muslim violence is a product of Muslim grievance. That grievance is, first and foremost, portrayed as the sin of European colonialism and alleged American imperialism. In the Muslim world's mind, those two sins are personified by the Jewish state of Israel, a nation the Muslim world believes was forced upon it by the colonial powers of Europe following World War II and is currently supported by the United States. Much of the Western world and the Western media have largely bought at least some of this narrative. Here's how it works. Because Israel, with the backing of the United States, is stronger than its Muslim neighbors, the media, while not defending Islamic terrorism, often portray terror against Israel, America, and even Europe as the actions of understandably angry underdogs fighting for what they deem justice. But what happens to this media narrative when Islamic terror is directed against a minority weaker than them? In this case, the millions of indigenous Christians throughout the Islamic world. The answer is that, rather than abandon this narrative, the media just don't report Muslim persecution of Christians, except for the most sensational cases. That's why you probably don't know that there are barely any Christians living in Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, nations where Christianity once thrived, or that this is happening in Egypt, Iraq, Iran, and even Lebanon. So yes, Christians are indeed the most persecuted religious group in the world today, but reporting it would violate the media's narrative of Christians as persecutors and Muslims as victims. I'm Raymond Ibrahim, author of the Al-Qaeda Reader for Prager University.
Now, I'll just conclude by telling you, wouldn't that be a powerful thing to show a kid at college who doesn't even know this happens? Because exactly as he explained, it's not reported. But I'll end with an even darker note. Why aren't Christians doing more? And I know that there are churches that care and do, but there are a lot of Christians in the West, and certainly in the United States. There should have been a million Christian march on Washington on behalf of co-religionists that are being destroyed in the Middle East. There just should have been. I don't want to make you feel bad or guilty over it. I just want you to know that if we don't fight, then nobody else will. So, here's a Jew fighting for the Christians just like you're Christians fighting for Israel. So I will end on an uplifting note. I do believe there is something good happening. And you see, I don't say things to make people feel good. For really the first time, thanks to America, thanks to a whole host of reasons, Jews and Christians really are aligned now. At least Jews and Christians who believe in the Bible, let's put it that way. And I'm not sure that that's a force that is easily defeated.